Welcome to Fix It Home Improvement, covering projects that every homeowner should know and great products for home and garden.
Hi, I'm JC, and this is where we share weekly home improvement tips. I'm here with my co-host, Cindy.
Hello, JC.
Hi, Cindy. Today we're going to be talking about under-sink repair, and we'd like to thank William Broadbent for liking and sharing our podcast. Did you know in 1800 BC, ancient Greece actually had clay pipes they designed to bring water into buildings and remove waste?
No, I didn't know that.
And ancient Rome, they had 11 aqueducts that brought in water directly from mountain springs. And then it was all a gravity-fed system. So they went from these springs, everything was slowly slanted down into these huge holding tanks, very similar to like our water towers.
Right.
Which is wild. So like our water towers, they pump up water into the water tower, and just the weight and the height of that water was what gives us our pressure in most cities.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, very fascinating. What a system. Since ancient Rome.
What did the Egyptians do?
They were really jealous.
In a desert.
Except once in a while with the Nile, and then too much water. We were talking about their homes where they destroyed their homes every year, then they had to rebuild.
Oh, that's funny.
But what's wild is the ancient aqueducts could satisfy the needs of 3.5 million people.
Wow, that's crazy.
Wild, huh? It wasn't until 1833 that the White House got running water. And in 1940, which isn't that long ago, only half of the U.S. homes had hot water, bathtubs, or a flushing toilet.
Wow. So we should start with the main drain pipes in your house and how they work.
So one thing that people don't think about is the main vent pipe that comes up and out of the house. And depending on the size of your house, you're going to have secondary vents, and these are connected to your drain pipe. And this helps your drain pipes flow without gurgling, and it also vents out sewer gas out of the house. Sewer gas is highly toxic, and this is from the breakdown of food and waste. It contains methane, carbon dioxide, sulfur, hydrogen sulfide, and it can cause headaches, nausea, dizziness, memory loss. And in high concentrations, one breath can cause a loss of consciousness.
Wow, that's
and
terrible.
if you're exposed to this for long term, it can actually cause death. So we were at one of our buildings when we were remodeling, and it was a 2-flat in Chicago, and outside they have this clean out trap. So it was, like you'd see the old manhole covers.
Right.
You would pull that off, and then it went down to this 6 foot deep and maybe 3 or 4 feet wide pit, and that's where the main drain was, so that you could rot it. And so we hired this plumbing crew, and one of the old timers, they called him Doc, and he was just a wild old timer, and they always had him jump in there, and he would do the rotting from inside the pit. And when he jumped in there, I guess that it was cracked, the main pipe, and he passed out.
Ugh.
And it was just wild. So we're all trying to help pull him up. So if you can imagine, we're all over this, and we're trying to, because he was now unconscious, laying in the bottom of this pit, and we're trying to grab him and lift him up and out of there. So sewer gas can be dangerous. And in fact, one tip, if you have, let's say you've rotted out, you've had slow drains and they're kind of gurgling, and you've rotted out your drains, and you still get that gurgling sound, what could be happening is you either have a bird's nest that had been built in the vent stack, or it's been clogged, and animals, sometimes squirrels get in there and die.
This is on top of your,
Yeah, coming out.
This is on top of your roof.
Right, exactly. So that's a troubleshooting tip if you have gurgling.
Are there caps that you could put on top of
They
it?
just started coming up with caps. I've seen some plastic ones, and they're very porous. They have slits and holes all over it because you need that to flow. You can't have a traditional cap on that. The other key thing with any of your drains is you have to have a trap. So that's that J-shaped pipe that holds water, so sewer gas can't escape into the house. And if you've just moved into a home, I would take the time to look under every sink, every laundry tub, and make sure that it actually has this J-shaped trap. A lot of times, like at the hardware store, customers would come in and they say they're changing their plumbing underneath the sink, and they would just bring in a straight pipe and then an arm. So a straight pipe with a little 90 on it, and then that went into their main drain in the wall.
Right.
And that is not a trap. A trap it absolutely looks like a J.
It's one piece.
Yeah, and sometimes a U on older homes, but you can't just have a 90 degree into your stub out or that that main pipe that sticks out of the wall, because sewer gas can come up into the house.
Well, I've seen pipes like under our sink that was with flexible pipe.
Right.
That it wasn't in the J shape.
Right.
So they're trying to like work it around
Create their own,
something
right.
else.
Because this is what's going to protect your family from the sewer gas. And in toilets, there's a built-in trap in the bowl, so that water prevents sewer gas from coming in. I was reading an article from the Portland, Oregon Vector Control. They say they get 10 to 15 calls a year from people who have rats in their toilets.
I'm not going to like where this conversation is going to go.
So they've worked their way up through the sewer system. This is usually on the first floor. They come up through the trap and they get stuck. They can't claw their way out of the toilet.
So is it dead?
No, a bunch of them were alive. Some were dead. But they love the sewer system.
It's gross.
Because it's warm, they have food and water, and then food scraps. They eat waste, they eat cockroaches, which are really
everybody
abundant.
knows that rats are disgusting.
So scientists estimated in 2014 that there's 2 million rats in New York City, and they were doing some experiments. They found that they could leap an average of 4 feet, and they can fall 5 floors and survive. They were using these rats in experiments. They were able to tread water for 3 days.
Ugh.
Amazing, huh? Their head can fit through an opening the size of a quarter. It's one of the only animals where their skull doesn't fuse together. It's not plated together.
How does this have anything to do with under sink repair?
Nothing, but I thought it was pretty interesting. So you want to stick with under sink repair?
Yes.
So most of these leaks are going to be very easy to repair. So if you have a leak under your kitchen or bathroom sink, in the bathroom, primarily the only place it can leak are the main pipes that are coming out from the sink. If you have a pop-up, so you have a little rod that you pull up to open and close the stopper.
Right.
You can also have a leak under this retaining nut that holds this rod that moves the stopper up and down. So one of the easiest things to do in the bathroom is just take a paper towel. Let's say it seems like there's a leak on the pipes. You're going to wipe the pipes dry, then run the water, and then just watch it. And you should see a little bit of water form if you have a leak around one of the nuts. And if that's the case, and that's probably the most common, you're just going to give that a quarter turn with your hand, or you can use a pair of adjustable pliers, give it a quarter turn, wipe it all down again, and then run the water. If you have older metal pipe, there could be rust that's creating a hole, and then you'd want to replace that and replace it with plastic. Plastic is just inexpensive, very easy to work with, and it's going to last forever.
Most people think that if you have metal pipes now, that you should replace it with the metal pipes.
Right, and they're interchangeable. So let's just say you have a metal pipe coming out of the wall, so your stub out's that main short piece of pipe, the main drain coming out of the wall. And even if that's metal and you have a metal nut there and you had existing metal pipe, you can replace all that with plastic, leave that metal stub out in place, and the plastic will fit right inside the metal and you'll have no problem. Once you've tightened those nuts, and if it still leaks, what you can do is replace the washers. So you can turn the water off. You'll want a little bucket or a pan underneath that trap, that J-bend, and you're going to loosen the 2 nuts on the trap. You'll take that off, and depending on where the leak is, you'll remove the pipe. And if you're going, at that point, I'd probably replace all the washers. I would take that to the hardware store, the old washers, just to make sure I get the right size. In the bathroom, you could potentially have 2 different sizes of washer, either 1.25 inches or 1.5 inches. It should all be 1.25 inches, but what happens sometimes is a builder will have an 1.5 inch stub out. The pop-up, or that main drain that's connected to your bathroom sink, that pop-up is always going to be 1.25 inches. To that, though, sometimes what a builder will do is they'll take a reducing nut and they'll connect a trap that's 1.5 inches and then a wall tube, the tube that's connected to that trap that goes into the stub out on the wall. They leave all that in 1.5 inches. Many builders, what they'll do is that if that stub out in the wall is 1.5 inches, they'll use a reducing nut there down to 1.25 inches, and then all of the pipe from the pop-up or the main drain down to that stub out will be 1.25 inches.
So it's always best when you're going to purchase either the washers, the nuts, the new J-bends, whatever, bring in the pipes.
It makes the most sense, especially in the bathroom. In the kitchen, it's always going to be 1.5 inches. But in the bathroom, it could potentially be 1.25 or 1.5 just because of the stub out. And you can reduce that in 2 spots. You can either reduce it down at the pop-up or that main drain coming out of the sink, or it can be reduced at the stub out.
Just bring it all in.
Yeah.
Put it in a bag and bring it all in.
That's the easiest. And just a tip, if you're changing over from metal to plastic, let's say that you have a metal stub out, so that pipe coming out of the wall, you would want to make sure that you use a metal nut on that metal thread, and then the rest of it you're going to use plastic nuts for the plastic thread.
All of these are sold separately. You can just buy a plastic nut. You could just buy a metal nut.
Right, exactly, if you need to. But the kits are going to come with all the nuts and washers that you need.
Right. If you're replacing all the pipes underneath your sink because you bought a new one or you just want to replace it, what's the process?
So in the bathroom, you're going to get an 1.25 main drain that connects to the sink, or you're going to get a pop-up. And a lot of the faucets now come with pop-ups because that main bar that you pull up is the same color as the faucet, and so that rod going down, and that's connected to a horizontal bar that pushes the stopper up and down. So you're going to want this pop-up. It's always going to be 1.25, and then you're going to need a trap, so a J, and then a wall tube. So that's that 90-degree tube that shoots straight into the stub out. To this, I would probably buy an extension tube around 6 inches so you can make it horizontally longer or vertically longer. So you're going to connect the pipes together using this. And they're all slip joints. So what that means is there's a slightly larger area on the top of each one of these pipes that the previous pipe can slip into.
Right.
And so it slips inside that body and is just held on by a little shoulder, maybe a few inches deep. And then you're going to connect that with a washer and a nut, and that nut works just like a compression fitting, and it makes it watertight, whether it's vertical or horizontal.
So you don't need any glue for this.
Right, exactly.
Like if you're using PVC. What is a P-trap? There's a lot of letters when you're talking about under sink pipes.
So a lot of plumbers will say, I need a J or I need a J-bend, and that's just the J-shaped trap itself. And then if somebody says they want a P-trap, it's usually the J and that wall tube. So if you hold it at an angle, it looks like a P.
It almost makes a P.
Exactly. To install your pop-up or your main drain, you're going to need plumber's putty or 100% silicone. And I really like plumber's putty. It's the easiest to work with. It's not messy or sticky like silicone. And you don't have to wait 24 hours for it to cure like silicone. What's nice about the plumber's putty is you're only going to use a small amount, but you can also use this for installing a garbage disposal or sink baskets on your kitchen sink. I would always get non-staining plumber's putty or no-stain plumber's putty, and this doesn't have the oil that the old-fashioned plumber's putty has. If you have any type of stone countertop or marble, plastic, that oil can dry it out and also stain any porous material. So if you get the non-staining or no-stain plumber's putty, it's goof-proof. You can use it on anything. I would always recommend plastic drain pipe, but if you're doing a pedestal sink or if you want a decorative look and using metal, one tip I would give you is get a wooden dowel and slide it into the pipe, and you want it the same as the inside diameter of the pipe. You're going to use a hacksaw and you're going to cut through until you break through the metal, then you're going to turn it. You don't want to try to cut all the way through because I found that bends it, and you're going to have a leak. And so using a dowel rod really helped, and it speeds up the process because some of this is pretty difficult to cut through. So you'd want a sharp hacksaw and then just one little section at a time and keep turning this, and you're going to get your best cut with that.
Or just use plastic, and they sell covers to go over the...
Or spray paint.
But for a pedestal sink, they sell covers that you just shove underneath it.
There you go.
Let's move on to kitchen sinks.
So for the kitchen sink, you can have a leak in more places. So the flange...
Well, there's a lot more going on underneath the sink.
Yeah, depending on what you have. So under the sink basket, you can have a leak any of your main pipes around the nuts. Again, if you have a metal J-bend, a lot of times they rust on the bottom of that J. You have garbage disposals, instant hot water, water purification. You've got dishwasher hoses, supply lines, your shutoffs. So the main thing is if you have water, let's say on the base of your cabinet, is to just wipe everything dry, get a bright flashlight under there, and just run the water and see where it's leaking from.
What's the process if you're going to change all your pipes?
So in a kitchen, the sink basket's a little different animal, and the sink basket is going to be connected above with a flange, and we're going to use plumber's putty again underneath this flange, and that's our gasket or 100% silicone. I really like the plumber's putty. I would use a no stain or non-staining plumber's putty.
Yeah, we got that from like 2 minutes ago when you explained that.
And then I really believe...
we all get it.
And to hold the sink basket, so this is a little more complex doing it yourself. The sink basket nut, generally, there's a few styles, but the most common is a very large nut underneath the sink. And so you're going to need a large adjustable pliers or some type of tool. And there's a couple different manufacturers that make these tools, but they're either called a strainer nut wrench, a sink drain wrench, or a plumber's wrench. And what they do is they grab the tabs, so that nut has little tabs on it, and these tools will grab those tabs and allow you to tighten or loosen it. And then they also have adjustable slip nut wrenches, and it has a little notch to grab the tabs on the sink basket.
So this is pretty difficult to do by yourself.
It is.
It's not impossible, but
right.
It's more difficult.
Because what happens is generally when you're tightening that nut, so let's say we've got the sink basket, we've opened it up. Underneath that flange, we're going to knead up our plumber's putty.
Non-staining.
And we're going to make a rope about a half an inch thick or about the size of our small finger. We're going to put that plumber's putty underneath the lip of the flange. We're going to put it on top of the sink, and then underneath, the sink basket has a rubber gasket, and then it has a cardboard gasket, which is a friction ring, and then this nut. And as you tighten up that nut, what happens generally, so you're underneath, the whole sink basket starts to turn. So they've got a tool called a sink strainer wrench, and it has two sides. And this is fairly inexpensive, and I really like this one because it works with the sink baskets with 3 crossbars or 4. Actually, Rigid has a really nice tool. It's called their faucet and sink installer.
Right.
And you put this into the sink basket. It grabs those crossbars and holds it so that you can tighten up that nut.
Because otherwise, if you're doing this with 2 people, somebody has to stand there with pliers.
So that was my I would say use a needle nose pliers, and you can drop it down into it, and that's going to hold those crossbars if you don't want to buy the tool. And then one interesting thing with that Rigid faucet and sink installer, I talked to Rigid, and it's only designed for sink baskets with the 4 crossbars. And a lot of the plastic sink strainers have 3 crossbars, just so you're aware of that. Once you have your sink basket in place, it's connected to a tailpiece, and generally this is just a very short piece of pipe, like an inch long, and it has a very unique flat top that goes flat against the bottom of the sink basket, and there's a special tailpiece washer. It almost looks like a top hat that fits into the tailpiece, and it presses together. It's one of the only washers that is just a flat surface against a flat surface. So it's very interesting. You need to make sure you have that, though. So let's say you have just one sink, then it's just very easy. You're going to go down to an extension pipe, and you'll go to a trap and then a wall tube into your stub out. If you have the most common double bowl kitchen sink, then you're going to need some type of kit that connects the 2 bowls together. If you have your stub out, so the main pipe that's coming out of your wall into your main drain, if it's centered between the 2 bowls, what you're looking for is a center outlet kit. So this is going to have 2 arms that go to a T, and then the bottom of that T you're going to connect to your trap, and then into a wall tube, and then into your stub out.
Right.
If you have your stub out underneath one of the sink baskets, then you're going to get something called an end outlet, END, and that has a piece that comes straight down out of one sink basket, and then it attaches to an arm that goes to the other sink basket, and now the bottom of that goes to a trap and directly into your stub out.
So this is very important because this will not work if you buy the wrong one.
Very difficult to connect, yeah. It's going to be a process of a lot of extra pipe if you don't get it. So if you got the stub out in the center, you want a center outlet. If you have the stub out off to one side or under one of the sink baskets, you want an end outlet. One of the most common ways to connect a garbage disposal is with the end outlet. So you're going to have the end outlet under your one sink basket, and then it's going to be attached, that arm is going to go straight into the garbage disposal. And there's also, like now in a lot of the new construction, they're putting a trap to the garbage disposal and an individual trap to the other sink basket. But if you have the traditional hookup, you would use an end outlet. The other thing you have to think about if you're getting under sink drain pipe for your kitchen is, do you have a dishwasher? So you're either going to, if you have a garbage disposal, your dishwasher is going to have a hose going to the hose barb from your garbage disposal. But if you don't have a garbage disposal, you need to make sure that you get an extension pipe that has a hose barb that you're going to connect to it. And some of these kits have them attached right to the piece.
Right.
Like an end outlet, it's going to have it, or you can buy a small, short piece of pipe, and these are all slip joints, so they slip inside each other, and you're going to have a hose barb there.
But the dishwasher should go through the garbage disposal.
If you have a garbage disposal, absolutely, because it helps clean it out, and it's just, it's a good thing to use.
So we all know now that you love plumber's putty.
Non-staining.
Of course. Do you have to use any type of glue or Teflon tape when you're connecting any of this stuff?
What's great about all this under sink, these slip joints, is instead of the old-fashioned rubber washers, they now use nylon beveled washers, so it's almost like a compression fitting, and you don't have to use Teflon or pipe thread compound on this. So where you would use Teflon tape or pipe thread compound would be on, and I say Teflon tape? Yeah. You know what's interesting is DuPont owns the Teflon trademark, and they no longer make any thread seal tape powder. So they were making this Teflon powder, and companies were using this to create Teflon tape. And so they used to let them use their name, Teflon, but they don't allow companies to do that anymore. So you're never going to see Teflon tape. It's all going to be pipe thread or PTFE thread seal tape. Funny,
but everybody asks for Teflon tape.
Yeah, you could still ask for Teflon tape. But...
Okay, so to finish that thought, where was the only place that you would use Teflon tape?
So Teflon tape and pipe thread compound are with tapered threaded pipe. So let's say you have galvanized pipe or black pipe, or even something as simple as, let's say, a shower head or the shower arm, and you're screwing it into a fitting. Anywhere where there's tapered male thread like that, that's where you're going to use it, because there's no washer to stop the water pressure from following the threads and leaking.
So if you're moving into your house, just buy a thing of Teflon tape, but it'll last you for the rest of your life, right?
Yes.
For the 3 times that you're going to use Teflon tape in your whole life,
You might use it more.
do you have any tips?
So let's say we're putting on a shower head. On that shower arm, on the male threads, you'd want to wrap this clockwise and wrap it 3 full times, and that's going to give you your best seal. If you're using pipe thread compound, so that's the paste, then what you want to do is you want to coat the male threads. I would always get pipe thread compound that's Teflon based rather than the oil based. So again, it's another type of goof proof product, because you can use this on plastic or anything porous.
What about the yellow Teflon tape?
So that's designed for black pipe. So anything that's carrying gas, you cannot use traditional Teflon tape on black pipe. You have to use this yellow gas PTFE tape. And this has a thick density, and it's going to fill the male threads. And with that, you only want to wrap it 1 full time and then overlap it by about 1/4. You don't want to wrap it 3 times. So it's a whole different density.
Do you have anything else to add?
I would say if you have a leak in your drain pipe under the kitchen bathroom, very easy project to do yourself. You can check it out, see if you can just tighten the nuts, change your washers. If you have to replace the pipes, very easy to replace.
When I first moved into my condo, the stuff underneath the sink in the bathroom was all metal.
Right.
And I was putting away my soap. I was putting underneath the sink.
Right.
And I hit the pipe.
Right.
And the whole thing just disintegrated. It was terrible.
That metal just dissolves.
Yeah, I know.
And you would think it'd be better, because it's much more expensive and heavy. But yeah, plastic lasts forever.
So there was
easy.
a panic call of, hey, come over with some stuff.
Right.
And fix this.
Get the video camera.
Yeah, let's do it.
And the main tool you're going to need is an adjustable wrench. I would have an adjustable pliers that's between a 2 and a 2 1/4 inch grip range. So like a Channel Locks, they do an excellent job. And what it's going to also allow you to do is, most communities, you have to have a 4-inch clean out on your main drain. And that little pop-up, that little square pop-up for you to tighten, remove that plug, is 2 inches. And then most of your slip nuts, it's right around 2 inches, like 1.5 inch slip nut. So if you have a 2 1/4 inch grip range, that'll do most of your projects.
That'll say on the package?
Yes.
The grip ranges?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what you're looking at. It's probably going to be a 10 or a 12 inch adjustable pliers. And in that, make sure you look at your grip range.
So when you're replacing any of these pipes, just bring them into the store. It's much easier.
Yeah, it makes it easy. And even if you've never done it before, if you're at the hardware store, have them help you assemble it before you even go home, because then you get a feel for how that you put your nut on first. You're going to slide your washer in. You want to make sure the beveled edge, most of these have the nylon washers. You want that beveled edge going towards the fitting, going towards the slip joint, and then how to tighten it up. And when you're putting one pipe into another pipe, if you're cutting the length, you want that length to be almost bottom out in the bottom of that slip joint. It'll be watertight even if you barely get it in with your washer. But if you ever hit it, like you said, you were putting stuff away and you hit it, if you don't have that pipe all the way into that socket, it's not as strong. So I would get it as close to the bottom of that socket as you can if you're cutting your pipe.
And everything can be cut.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Let's wrap this up.
You can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.
If you enjoyed it, please leave us a review.
You can check out our home improvement videos on our YouTube channel, Fix It Home Improvement.
And you can subscribe to that as well.
You can email us at fixitpodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you for listening.
Talk to you next week.